Question is, how does the United States respond to these attacks in France? Tony Shaffer, Lieutenant Colonel, and our old friend joins us now with the implications for us. Colonel, it's good to see you this morning. How does the U.S. respond to this?
Two things immediately. First off, we've got to figure out how the French failed to do their job to keep the people safe. I don't know if they didn't go far enough to detect and defeat the Charlie Hebdo network, or if this was a new network. Any way you cut it, we need to figure out rapidly, Tucker, why this failed. What were the observables? Why did they not get detected? And let's remember, this was very sophisticated. This was a rolling attack. This had to be rehearsed. We had suicide bombers with vests. A bomb maker had to be present to build those. And most importantly, they had to rehearse this. This was a military-style attack. The military-aged men involved were probably jihadis who came from Syria, moved back through Europe, went to Paris. These are all observables, and they should have been observed, and they weren't. Secondly, we then have to take that lesson and then figure out how to penetrate the network. To defeat a network, you must penetrate it. That means old-fashioned espionage. That means old-fashioned special operations, grabbing people, interrogating them. I'm sorry, that's a rough word in some circles around here, but you need to figure out what's going on inside the network, inside the heads of the terrorists, to defeat it. And then, as Seb Gurka said earlier, we've got to go about trying to go at the root cause. That's back in Syria and back at the original issues that we have to do both immediately.
Colonel Shaffer, so when we look at these type of things happening, it's really disturbing to see that France has been hit very hard now in two very major terror attacks, almost to the point where you see soft targets like concert halls and perhaps stadiums where there aren't proper security or additional security, just like we've seen some of those attacks in the U.S. What's the lesson and the message from here? And really, it should be concerning to the president of France that they've been hit like this severely.
Well, I think, again, we need to get on the intelligence game. We can't be everywhere constantly. As much as we have organizations like the NYPD, they've got a global intelligence collection system, we have to really get in there. Next thing, we have to be, as a society, more vigilant. We have to understand, Kimberly, that people are out to do us harm. President Obama was ill-timed and I think ill-informed to say what he said yesterday. ISIS is not contained. ISIS is not remotely on the run. We have to get ahead of these folks and recognize that we as a society, those folks in Europe, all have to be vigilant to the fact that people are going to be planning to do catastrophic attacks against soft targets. That means every individual has to be aware, and we have to demand more of our political leaders to understand that we must look where the threat is. Radical Islam is the key. They are coming for us, and I think, I'm sorry to say, I don't want to say this, be alarmist here, their next target is going to be the United States. And I think we have to take the threat of ISIS seriously. They have followed through with every threat they've made so far. There's no reason to doubt that they're going to come to our direction now.
Waleed Ferris, our terrorism analyst, was talking to us earlier. He said that, to his understanding, there had been suggestions that something was coming. French authorities knew that something was up. They just didn't have a handle on it, and they didn't expect anything this big. Failure of intelligence, Tony, or just good planning on the part of the terrorists?
Both. John, this was clearly a failure of intelligence. I mean, you cannot plan something of this scope without what I would call observables. Again, this was planned, this was rehearsed, this was executed flawlessly, which means they went through the step-by-step. This was something they should have seen. Was this a step up by the terrorists? No doubt. This is an A-level game on their part. But John, you know, the bottom line here is the French security service has failed. Again, this is what less than a year ago was the Charlie Hebdo attack, and this is where I would be firing people right now for failing to understand the need to go and look at the difficult places they have to look where the terrorists exist. And again, this goes back to we have to do the hard job of putting assets out there. Morton Storm was on with Kelly, with Megyn Kelly last night. He was a penetrant of Al-Qaeda. He was an inside man. We need to get inside men in these networks to get ahead of them. If we don't, drones don't help us by the fact they only kill people. You cannot interrogate a dead man. We have to get back into the hard business of doing the hard work of penetrating the networks.
Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer joining us live this morning. Thanks a lot for that.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Appreciate it.